Peace be with you.
With you and with your spirit.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, proclaimed by Saint Matthew.
Glory to you, Christ our Lord.
While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus questioned them, saying, "What is your opinion about the Messiah? Whose son is he?" They replied, "David's." He said to them, "How then does David, inspired by the Spirit, call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I place your enemies under your feet?' If David calls him Lord, how can he be his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word. Nor from that day on did anyone dare to ask him any more questions.
Glory to you, Christ our Lord.
My dear brothers and sisters and dear children, recently we had election in our nation, and we noticed that after a 4-year or 8-year term, the governments will change, like either Democrats or Republicans will be ruling us. Because people are not happy with one political system or another, or one president or another. So also in India we see that after every election, people will either select leftist or rightist or BJP or Congress. So people are not happy with any of these democratic rulers. Then there are communist governments where political party is important, still people are not happy with that. Then there are autocrats and people are disappointed with them. There were kings in the past and people thought democracy will be better. But nobody is happy with any of the rulers of this world. Now today we are celebrating the feast of Jesus the Christ as a king. And in the Hindu mythology, or according to the concept in Kerala, there was a ruler. He is called Maveli, or we all know about the Onam celebrations. And this Maveli was a former king, and he was ruling with justice. There was equality, there was peace, there was no exploitation, and everybody was happy with him. But we don't know whether it is true or not, because it is a myth. However, that shows the dream of the people. But according to our Christian belief, Jesus will come back again as a second coming of Christ. And at that time, he will separate the good from the bad. And then he will suppress the Satan, the devil. And he will rule over the world. And this universe will have its own change according to the book of Revelation. And today is the last Sunday according to the liturgical calendar. Next Sunday, we begin to observe Advent and prepare for Christmas. So on this Sunday, we are celebrating the feast of Jesus as the King. According to the book of Revelation, chapter 19, verse 16, John has written that the Father will enthrone, God the Father will enthrone his Son as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So he is above all the kings and above all the lords of this universe. Now, oftentimes Pharisees, Sadducees, and other leaders of the time question Jesus. Here in today's gospel, we see Jesus is questioning the Pharisees, and they are he's asking them a question: whose son is the Messiah? So they immediately answered, he's David's son, because according to the Jewish belief, a descendant of the David's tribe, he will be the Messiah. And so that is why they have been keeping the genealogy of David, and also genealogy of Aaron, because the high priest will come from the descendant of Aaron. Because when David wanted, he built his palace, a beautiful palace, but the temple of God was not built. It was only in a tent. The Ark of the Covenant was in a tent. So he asked God's permission to build the temple for God. He had collected every material for that because he was rich. However, God did not allow him to build the temple. But God said through the prophet Nathan that your son will build the temple. And of course, we know that his son Solomon built the temple of Jerusalem. However, that lasted only a few centuries, and then because of the sins of the Israelites, the Babylonians destroyed the temple. But after 70 years, they rebuilt the temple after they came back from Babylon. However, there was no presence of God felt through the Shekinah cloud. That means a glorious cloud was in the Holy of Holies. That was absent. Even when King Herod the Great rebuilt the temple, it was missing. But the glorious presence was felt when Jesus came. Unlike any other prophets, Jesus did a lot of miracles, signs of the presence of God. And so the question is, whose son is this Messiah? So their answer was David. But out of that, Jesus was asking more further questions which they could not answer. In the Bible, we see Jesus, the Messiah, as the son of 7 people. 7 is important in the Bible because it is the number of perfection. So, first of all, Messiah is the son of God. Of course, God promised that he will come to this world. The Messiah is the anointed one, and according to the genealogy of Luke, it traces back all the way to God. And then the second one is, he is the son of Adam. Because God, after the fall of Adam, said that the son of this woman, will save the world. So he was also known as the son of David. That was the son of Adam, because that was the first covenant that God made. Then he is also known as Son of Man, because in the Bible you often see that Jesus is attributing himself as the Son of Man. And that is the third one. The fourth one is, he is the son of Abraham, because God made covenant with Abraham. And all the other people were idolaters. They were worshipping the creatures, not the Creator. Here Abraham was faithful to God, and he made a covenant according to God's request. He circumcised, and all his descendants, all the male circumcised, as a covenant relationship. So Jesus was, or Messiah was also known as the son of Abraham, and then son of David, as we mentioned before. Then he was also known as son of Mary, because of course he is biologically born out of Mary. And then he was also popularly known as son of Joseph, because he is known as Jesus of Nazareth, because people know that Joseph is the foster father, and usually people are known by the father's name. So thus, there are 7 people attributed as the parent of the Messiah. Now, Jesus says that David also mentioned the Messiah, though he is a son, as the Lord. How come a father call his son the Lord, like a divine being? The reason is that he is not just a human being, but he has a divine origin. And that is what Jesus wanted to point out. And then Jesus said, quoting from the Old Testament, he said, "The Lord said to my Lord, who is going to be a descendant of David, sit at my right hand." So Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God. When we read in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verses 55, we notice that St. Stephen, when he was persecuted, he was stoned to death. He opened the eyes to heaven. He looked at heaven and he noticed that heaven was open. And he could see Jesus standing at the right-hand side of the Lord. To sit at the right-hand side means person second in authority. So the king's prime minister or queen will be sitting on the right-hand side of the king. So that shows the authority of the person. So the Lord said to my Lord, which is the Messiah, to sit at my right hand until I place your enemies under your feet. So who is the enemy of Jesus? The enemy of Jesus is not the Pharisees, not the scribes, not the Romans, not any of the human beings. It is the Satan. Because Jesus came to defeat the enemy, which is a Satan, because it was a Satan who made people to or broke the relationship between the first parents and God. And he is still here. And until the second coming of Christ, he will be playing dirty ways of tempting people to turn against God. And so we have to be careful in dealing with this Satan, because he will always encourage us by different means to deviate from God. So in the Old Testament, in the book of Joshua chapter 10, verses 16 to 27, we read that when Joshua attacked the Canaan, the promised land, they were almost going to win, and then there were 5 kings who were hiding. The 5 local kings of Canaan were hiding in a cave, and the military officers found them. They were arrested and they were brought in front of Joshua. And Joshua said the military officers to step on them, showing that these people are already defeated, and then he killed them. So that shows how the conquerors show their victory over their enemies. We see some statues like the statue of the Blessed Mother. She is stepping on a serpent. It is not just a regular serpent. It is symbolic of the original serpent, that is the Satan. So that shows or reminds us of the book of Genesis, where God promised that the woman will crush the head of the serpent with her son. So Jesus, the child that Mary is bearing, she and her son, they are destroying the serpent. That is a symbolic of that. Or when we look at the statue of Saint Michael, we notice that he is stepping on the Satan. Or when we look at the statue of Saint George, we notice that he is stepping on the serpent. So the destruction of the serpent will be fulfilled at the second coming of Christ. And so we observe this feast of Christ the King. That feast started only recently, which is in 1925. Pope Pius XI started this feast. There is a background, political background for that. The World War I, the First World War, brought a lot of calamities because of the political struggle between the rulers of different nations. And then, still after the end of the First World War, there was no peace. There was again another World War, Second World War. So in between that time, the Pope Pius XI, through 2 encyclicals, he mentioned that it is God, it is Jesus who is our King, and there is no other King who is equivalent to that. And so we celebrate this feast acknowledging that Jesus is our leader, He is our guide, He is the head of the church, and Jesus is working through the church. And without the church, we cannot have salvation. And through the church, we are receiving the sacraments, which nourishes us and which gives us strength to fight against Satan. So let us acknowledge the kingship of Jesus, and the church is the bride of Jesus, or the Messiah. And we are the children of the church. And so let us be united with the church and with its head, which is Jesus Christ, and win salvation, which will be fulfilled in our resurrection at the second coming of Christ. And let us enjoy the eternal peace by keeping up the commandments of Lord and by being faithful to the Lord.
Please stand and turn to page